Welcome into another live episode of the Bully Ball Podcast on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Steph and I are going to discuss Debo's trade request. What teams could he possibly fit on? What Jed York said about Brock Purdy. And new mocks are coming out. There's a new name at number 11 that might be a little bit interesting. Stick around right after this. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Steph Sanchez. This is the Bully Ball Podcast on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Steph, how are you?
I'm sensational, man. I'm feeling great. It's the start of a new season. It's officially the start of, the NFL draft season. So, I'm locked in.
Yeah, 100%. And before we get any of that, it is the end of the season. It's a little bit bittersweet on Sunday, but we have a new Super Bowl champion. Congratulations, Kendrick Lamar. You did it. We all were rooting for you, man. You did it. I can't believe it. I mean, I am so happy. Kendrick Lamar has pushed himself into the elite quarterback discussion because he wins the Super Bowl. And it's insane, that someone who came from California could do that and just take over. Kendrick Lamar, you are the Super Bowl champion. Congratulations. Print up the ring and give him the Lombardi. What a game.
He did it without barely any help, too, which speaks volumes.
Yes, and absolutely wasn't carried at all. He carried, right? He carried. Mm-hmm. So, yes, Shout out to Kendrick Lamar, our new Super Bowl champion. But it is a little bit bittersweet after because you get the realization that there is no more football. And we are fully deep in draft season. And there are some new mocks that are out, so we could talk about pick 11. But funny enough, the day of the Super Bowl it comes out, Deebo Samuel requested a trade in his exit interviews. And, Steph, I want to start here. We've speculated that it was possible, but I think we kind of changed course on this after the Brandon Ayuk injury based on the fact that we don't know how long the timeline is going to be. But here's where I want to start. The 49ers weren't going to trade him, it looked like. He's asked for that. So were they going to hold on to him for another year? And they're already at a point where his value right now is, what, a fourth rounder?
If we're lucky.
Right. Okay. But this is just, I'm trying to get my head into the psyche of Deebo Samuel. I mean, not Deebo Samuel, Kyle Shanahan, because they were ready to run it back with Deebo again, and then Deebo said he wanted out. Do you feel like that drop against the Rams was the breaking point?
Well, I think we got to continue to ask, like, whose idea was this? I think we know it was Deebo's idea. And if we look at, like, breaking points, I think there were some points in which, the 49ers or some people within the 49ers are probably like, yeah, we're ready to move on. But as we're saying, like, I don't think Kyle Shanahan was at that point, right?
Right.
So do we see that as a breaking point for Kyle? No, I don't think so, right? I think this whole situation is kind of forcing Kyle Shanahan's hand a little bit. And that's a part of all this that I don't like, because I think you need to be able to move on from players when it's time, ideally before it's time,
Right.
like, because we were talking about this last offseason. It was floated around. They overvalued him at the time. There were offers for him that, I don't think were up to par of what they wanted in return for him. He plays another season under his contract, and his value dips. And I can't think of a time where you keep a player longer than, you should have, and, the value increased, right? Like, I can't think of a time where that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we knew that this is where things were headed. I think even with the Brandon Ayuk situation, yes, it added uncertainty, but what did Deebo do even with Brandon Ayuk out, even with Christian McCaffrey out? There were other guys who stepped up. Jawan Jennings stepped up towards the end of the season. It was Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall and Deebo Samuel had the same amount of touchdowns by the end of the season. Like, that's insane to me. So, yeah, I mean, I think that tells you that Deebo and his role on this offense, I think, is time to move on, because I just don't see a role for him right now. And I think for him, there's a bit of, I don't want to say he's a little delusional, but I think he's not seeing the reality of the situation. He continues to talk about lack of opportunity. And even at Radio Row, he had that interview with Kay Adams, and he kind of alluded to the same fact. Pretty much the same thing he tweeted out in the middle of the season, right? And then he had that game
Right
where
after
they
the Bears
force fed him and he didn't do anything. So it's not a matter of lack of opportunity. You know, you weren't getting open, so you're not going to get the ball. And when you do get the ball, your impact is just not the same. So I think with all that, there's, you know, Debo has to face the music a little bit. I think when we see what his value, or when he sees what his value is this offseason, maybe that picture becomes a little bit clearer to him. I think the 49ers know they're not going to get a lot for him in return. And so I think it's either going to be a trade or a release, just based on that situation with the 49ers want away, because from the money standpoint, you know, that also plays into all of this as well, the dead cap hit and whatnot. So we'll see. But I think we definitely know, like, it seems all but sure that Debo's not going to be with the team in 2025.
Yeah, and it's a post-June 1 move, obviously. And if you're worried about the dead cap hit, I think the way that you look at it is you look at what happened with the Bills and Stephon Diggs. When it's time to go, it's time to go. You cannot hold on to somebody who doesn't want to be here. 1, 2 is not as impactful. And because of dead cap, because you're worried about dead cap. There's ways to maneuver around that. If it's time to go, it's time to go. The Denver Broncos made a similar move for Russell Wilson, got rid of him. You know what? 2 years, you're back in the saddle. You find a quarterback. You have to make these moves. You cannot be hamstrung by the idea that, oh, it's dead cap hit. We can't afford that. No. This, when it's time, it's time. If he's saying this and you're putting that together with his play, it's time to go. And the only reason that the cap hit is that high, blame yourself, 49ers. You're the one who restructured him when we all thought it was time to go. So I don't want to hear this about dead cap. Oh, you can't afford because of dead cap. No. The salary cap isn't funny money. It's real, and it will be a big dead cap hit. But everybody else does it. Stephon Diggs is your perfect example. When he was moved from the Bills to the Texans, $32 million dead cap hit. It's time to go. That's it. Thank you for everything, Debo. Thank you for everything. You know, but you know, good luck when you know wherever you go. So again, look, the contract's there. They had their out. But they restructured and they thought, again, we all fell for it. We were like, hey, bounce back season, best shape of his life. You know, he's angry, contract year, all those things. Like, I remember, you know, we did all that, but it is what it is. You got to take your loss on the chin and say, this is time to move on. Now, what are the teams that you're thinking about in terms of fits? So I've got a few. So Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus released a mock draft in which Deebo Samuel was a part of a trade package for the 49ers to move into number 5 from 11. It wasn't Deebo 4 or 5, like in a pick swap. It wasn't that. It was a bunch of things, right? So I think people kind of misconstrued that and they said, well, why would you get, you know, a pick swap for it? It wasn't 1 for 1. That's not what that was. It was a whole trade package, right? That would be an absolute dream to move into the top 5. An absolute dream. Now, like, when I say absolute dream, it means dreams are not reality. So I would say no to that. The Jaguars definitely would be a team that looks like he could be a fit. I would say the Patriots as well, too, who should be in the market for another wide receiver as well, whether that be T. Higgins in free agency, you know, or in the draft, you know, whatever it is. Anybody else? I mean, I think the only other teams that I could think of for Deebo Samuel to be a fit would be a Kyle Shanahan tree team.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I've always been intrigued by the thought of Deebo possibly going to the Ravens, even in like previous seasons. I don't know if he really fits into that now. And, you know, I don't think they need him necessarily, right? But I just think that'd be a fun pairing. You know, they have a ground game that they emphasize, and that's the other thing, right? Does he want to continue to be used as a wide back, or does he want to just be a wide receiver solely? I think based on that answer, that can cut down interested list of teams by quite a lot, because I think other teams probably see what we do, that this man's not getting open on his own.
Here's
man
one.
Coverage. Yeah.
Here's one. Washington.
Yeah. I mean, any team that as currently constructed is seeing a lot of zone coverage just based on, you know, the type of offense that they run. I think that would benefit Deebo Samuel. It would allow him to do what he does best. Just a team that has, you know, short yardage stuff. And I know Jaden Daniels was like one of the top, I think, quarterbacks in like short yardage, middle of the field work. So I think in that regard, he'd fit in. Obviously, the connection to Adam Peters. But does Adam Peters want him? I'm skeptical. I don't know. As far as fan bases go, I haven't seen one fan base that's like clamoring for Deebo Samuel. I haven't seen one fan base making jersey
Pittsburgh.
swap edit.
Pittsburgh.
I've even seen Pittsburgh that's always clamoring over our receivers, like not really be interested this time around. Although that is a name or team that Ben Albright at least hinted yesterday, because someone asked, "Oh, are the Broncos interested?" And he said, "For Stafford, no, but sorry." Basically, he said the Steelers will be interested in Deebo, but the Broncos, he has said, wouldn't be, which has been another team that's been floated as an option by fans or just media.
And Deebo on his podcast mentioned, "I'd love to go play for them. They have a good quarterback. They have a great defense. And go fit." It's just. That's
Broncos,
that's another part that's kind of bothering me, Steph. Just shut up about where you want to go on your podcast, man. Please, but whatever. Hopefully this gets done sooner than later. Go for it. I'm sorry.
I mean, but he's probably just trying to increase his own value, right? Like he's hyping himself up to
honestly,
other teams.
His podcast is only gonna do more damage because it's terrible. I don't understand. It's not good. There's players who aren't at the higher apex or anything like that in terms of I guess league-wide perception that have much better podcasts. It's unlistenable. The more you podcast, it probably decreases because you have to trade for Deebo and the podcast. Christ.
Yeah, no, it's that should be a contingency in the trade. No more podcasts, please. But yeah, I can see the Steelers being an option. I did mention at the Senior Bowl, I saw John Lynch and Tomlin speaking 2 days in a row, and there were pretty long conversations. I know a lot of people are like, well, they know each other, just saying hi. No, this wasn't just a hello, right? And so they were having conversations. That could be something, that could be nothing, but definitely could be a team that makes sense for Deebo. At this point, I don't care where he goes, wherever the shoe fits, man. I just think we know something's going to happen. It'd be nice to get a pick in return. Who was it? Nick Wagner this morning said that he sees a day 3 pick for Deebo.
That makes sense.
Day 3 and perhaps another late round pick would probably be enough for the 49ers to trade Deebo. I'd take that at this point. I'd take two late round picks.
Be less than what they got for Trey Lance.
Yeah, but you got to think about positional value, like Trey Lance,
of course.
Quarterback.
Of course.
Positional
value. He's a running back. He's a wide receiver. Look. At the end of the day, I appreciate Deebo for everything that he's done. Everything. That 2021 season, I don't think I've ever seen, aside from Jerry Rice, an offensive player carry the entire team. Right? Carry them the entire way, and that's true. And I'll always have fond memories of Deebo, man. And the play against Seattle on the reverse, when in the gotta have it all game, and it is what it is. It's a business. He wants to move on. The 49ers are going to try to do everything they can. I have nothing but good things to say about Deebo. So thank you for everything. And wherever you land, good for you, man. And I hope I wish you nothing but success unless you're playing the 49ers.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't know where Deebo's going, but that was the talk on the Super Bowl as well, too. So speaking of talk, Jed York on Brock Purdy had some, I guess, I understood why he would say something like this, because I don't think anybody disagrees with him. And I think, it didn't really shed on any light, in terms of how much he wants to get paid. He just said all the right things about Brock. We want him here long term. He's a great human being. We value him in the organization. Steph, I really wasn't blown away by anything that Jed York said, because I feel like that's what everybody says, and everyone seems to agree. And here's the quote itself. "I know we want Brock to be here for a long time, and we'll do everything we can to make that work. Brock is just a tremendous human being. I'm looking forward to a long-term partnership." That is not a bombshell. That is literally 2 + 2 = 4. And I didn't really see anything too crazy about that or shocking at all.
No, I mean, it's pretty much what the 49ers, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan have been saying anytime when asked about Brock Purdy and his contract, right? And we already know this. Like we know that they want him for a long time. It's just a matter of putting your money where your mouth is, figuratively and a little bit literally as well, because you got to get this done soon. And I know there's been reports, the 49ers are interested in doing that. But at the end of the day, it's just talk. Because I remember them saying the same thing about Brandon Ayuk as well. The longer you wait, the harder it is to make it happen, especially when other chips start to fall. So you need to get this done before other chips start to fall and complicate the issue. So I think they know that. I think they've learned their lesson the hard way. And so, yeah, they just got to, show us some action with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and waiting on an edge player, even if it is Nick Bosa, waiting to pay a wide receiver, that's different. This is quarterback.
Yeah.
And again, when we talk about the market, owners across the league have been in a spot where they're like, is this guy worth this amount of money? We don't know, but we also know that we won't have a quarterback if he doesn't play. Like, I think of Miami and Tua. I don't think that Miami really believes that Tua is worth all that money, but they're scared of the unknown. And that's kind of where the market continues to rise. It's because ownership is like, yeah, that's a lot of money. Yeah, we're going to lose other people, but what are we going to do? Not have a quarterback? So that's why the market continues. And you look at a player and you're like, why is he getting that much? It's because of the unknown. But with this one, they can't stumble on their feet. And they've done a great job in terms of creating a soft landing for the cap, right? Like, opening up a bunch of cap space, and they still can do things, and any potential extension for George Kittle or any other player would actually increase their cap space. Same thing with Brock. So they're in a good spot. And if this team, and I forget who it was that was talking about this season feels like a real like all-in season, everything in the middle, and it has to be because you have to get back, especially considering that you just watched Kendrick Lamar win the Super Bowl and he's never even been there before. Like, you've got to get back to that game. But you have to get this thing rolling into training camp right away. Like OTAs, rookie minicamp, all that, everything needs to be rolling. That's it. No more distractions, anything like that at all. Everything has to be rolling. And that's the part where I think the organization needs to not stumble on their feet and not mess around with this as it is.
Yeah, and I don't think they want to. I do suspect that they're putting it out there that they want to get this done quickly, just in case they hit some snags in the road. Their intentions are out there that, hey, we wanted to get it done quickly. It's the other side's fault. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what was going on, but I don't want any like games or headline creations. The only headline needs to be Brock Purdy got his extension, right? And if we can make that happen before free agency negotiating period, which I know is like a month away, and if we get that done before the draft at the very least, then I feel good. Because think about it, Jay, like to this point, this offseason has gone pretty well. I mean, aside from the Debo thing, and even that, like we could see as a blessing in disguise, I think everything has kind of fallen into place for the 49ers, and it's set up to be an all-in offseason and season, right? Like you could tell they're looking to be aggressive. So if you're looking to be aggressive, why wouldn't you be aggressive in paying Brock Purdy and getting that done quickly, right? It wouldn't really align to what they're trying to do this offseason. It wouldn't set the right message for anybody. You want to attract free agents, right? Like you got to have your quarterback in place and not have any drama associated with that, right? I don't think there's going to be any drama. But I do think that's the next big thing. You got Saleh. We're really excited about that. We're going to work on shoring up the trenches and defense and all that in the draft and in free agency. But I think the next chip that has to fall for the 49ers this offseason has to be that Brock Purdy extension. So I think they get it done just because look at how quickly they signed Garoppolo, when it was time to do that. And I know. But at the same time, it didn't take long for that contract to not look so bad.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Right. Again, you sign a deal, 10 minutes later, someone else is going to sign a deal that's going to make that look smaller, and that's how it goes. But I mean, in Garoppolo's case, you just simply don't let someone that handsome out of your building. Like once you get him in the building, you gotta lock that in. And I think that's the part that we're missing a little bit of. But yeah, look, I also want to be optimistic that this is going to get done early on. Again, I think considering everything that happened last offseason, I think everybody in that building would say that the Ayuk thing, the Williams thing, the McCaffrey injury, all that stuff, it definitely contributed, at least a little bit, right? Like Ayuk came in, he was getting himself open, but wasn't having the impact, especially considering the contract. And then Trent was gone. So look, get it done. Let's move into this all in part. Again, the 49ers can do many things in the draft. They can bring in a bunch of people in free agency. They can, they're in a position right now with all the cap space that they have where, and we're going to talk about this mock draft where if you address edge with a stud edge right away, then you can go into the defensive tackle market in free agency and put some money down for somebody, right? And bring in an impact player. So again, the team is there. It's all, got it. There's different ways for them to go about this, but it all starts with the quarterback. And this offense needs to get back to being not as good as it was in 2023, whatever year it was. Because I pushed that out of my mind already. I forget what year we're in. The year they made the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. It's got to be moving in that direction. Like it's got to be moving back to there. Can't be that efficient because it's almost impossible. But I like this question. This is a good one from Giannis. Says, guys, who do I feel like Matt Hennessy will? Why do I feel like Matt Hennessy will be Brendel's replacement? And they bring back Ben Barnes to go at left guard. Watch the fan base panic when that happens. So we all want Dahlman from the Falcons, but what people forget is Dahlman replaced Hennessy. And again, picking up Hennessy off of the practice squad is just low cost, low reward. I mean, high reward type thing. Ben Barnes played very well at left guard. There's different ways for them to go about it. Again, left guard is going to come down to Barch, Burford. Maybe they bring someone in free agency. Tevin Jenkins is somebody that's off the top of my head from Chicago who's played very well when they moved him from left tackle to left guard. I know you think the Bears offensive line is bad. Jenkins is like the one that's actually good. And he's a free agent. He's 26. So there's different ways for them to go about that. But the Matt Hennessy thing is pretty interesting because you bring in somebody like that and you can see how he's recovering from it. And he could possibly be a low-cost guy. So I don't think that's as crazy as people think when you look at it through the lens. I know everybody wants 5 All-Pros on the offensive line. I get it, guys. You want the 5 best offensive linemen in the history of the game, and that's the only way to do it. It's not how it works. So you might be able to do all that.
It's like, I mean, yeah, we would like that, but I think at the same time, like we just be happy with an upgrade at center, right? At the very least. Correct. And that's not very hard to do. The bar's pretty low for an upgrade at center right now. So yeah, I'm all ears. I'm open to that. Ryan Kelly as well, center for the Colts. He's going to be available. So I think, there's going to be options for the 49ers and guys who have a lot of experience, which is what, Kyle Shanahan typically is going to be looking for. I'll keep saying it. I don't think a center in the draft is going to be something that the 49ers go for. If so, they'll probably turn them into a guard or something, like the typical thing they do, but not for starting. Kyle Shanahan has never started a rookie center, no matter how high he's been ranked, coming into the draft. So yeah, I think any one of those top center free agents is going to be an option for the 49ers. And there's some pretty good ones out there. So I'm confident that they are going to be able to find a pretty solid multi-year upgrade for center.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll end the show with a review of a mock draft and a player that's in there. We'll talk about that as well too. And, I know everybody wants the 49ers to draft 11 offensive linemen, 10 offensive linemen with their draft picks. I get it, but we'll figure out a way. There's different ways to skin a cat. Steph, are the 49ers about to lose someone else from their front office as the poaching continues? Why don't you tell us a little bit more about who interviewed with the Jacksonville Jaguars for their GM spot?
Yeah, so Josh Williams, who's been on the 49ers staff for quite some time. I'm trying to find the actual thing, but it was he's the director of scouting and football operations for the 49ers. Yeah, and I'll just say this. I don't know his specific role, right? But I do know that he is always among, the top in the scouting department of the 49ers. Like he's always around the top guys. So definitely think he has John Lynch's ear on, just scouting and evaluating players. And so I'm not sure how big of a loss this is, but I do know he's someone that has been, kind of rising up the ranks in that scouting department for the last few years. And, I do think that would continue if he were to stick around with the 49ers. But again, he's getting the nod as a Jags GM, at least the interview. So we'll see what comes of that. Who knows? Like, could the 49ers maybe bring Rain Carthon back if Josh Williams leaves? Like, that's always an option, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the door's always open for you to just come back in and out. It's like a clubhouse. But I'll be honest. I don't know Josh Williams' role, but I do know that this is again an opportunity for the 49ers to acquire more comp picks for next season, because it is a minority interview who's hiring for the GM position. And that would just continue, right? Like the 49ers have their comp picks that are coming in for a bunch of people, and it's still happening. So, again, this is just another opportunity. And when we talk about player development, we can't talk about this organization and this regime without talking about all of the people in the front office and all of the coaching hires, right? I think we even have an idea of like, okay, Salah's here, Gus Bradley's here. When eventually does the torch get passed to KJ Wright, right? And again, like passing it all down, like and the same thing kind of felt like that with D'Amico as well too. So we literally have to give the 49ers their flowers with, no matter what you feel about, what players they picked and things like that, their reputation around the league is highly regarded. And there's plenty of people that are still looking to get their hands on, up and coming guys and everything as well too. I mean, look how quickly Minnesota's turned themselves around under, my God, why is his name slipping my mind? Steph, help me out here.
Who?
The Minnesota's GM from the Niners.
Oh, I forgot his name.
Chat, let us know. But yeah, again, obviously Rain Carthon, it didn't work out. But again, D'Amico, obviously you see that, it didn't work out for Salah. But yeah, Kwesi, that's right. Okay. And then, so you see that people are still trying to get what the 49ers, sauce is, right? Like a little bit. And I think this is another part of that. Now, Godspeed to you, Josh Williams, if you make it into Jacksonville and you have to deal with being a part of that organization. Godspeed to you. It's not going to be easy. And if you were able to turn that around, you're going to get a lot more praise. So, yeah. But again, this is just another opportunity for the 49ers to just continue to build these comp picks up, man. And I think that's the part that we should really be focused on at this point.
Yeah. But as we're talking about the draft, I mean, it's mock draft season, Jay. And,
yes.
I continue checking to see what, people have for the 49ers in mock drafts. I continue to see tackles, which kind of annoying. Just this morning, I started seeing wide receivers. So I'm like, all right, these fucking casuals, like.
Oh, damn, casuals is crazy. All right, but here's the thing. I stopped writing about mocks because every mock was Kelvin Banks. And I'm just like, all right, man, can somebody give me a different name, like in a different scenario? Because you guys are just like, what do they need? Kelvin Banks. He's like, come on.
They take the low-hanging fruit. That's what I'm saying. Like they're casuals to that team. Because like I get it. Not every draft person who does these mock drafts knows the ins and outs. So like they literally look at what are fans saying this team needs, or like on the surface level, what's a need for this team, right? And so everyone says tackle. Like they've been saying that for like the last couple years now, but I think we know the 49ers are probably less likely to take a tackle in the first round. So that's why we go elsewhere. But yes, they definitely always go for the low-hanging fruit.
Now, here's another one. And I threw this out there because I don't think Kyle can resist himself. Luther Burden, who now, hold on if you don't stop me if you've heard this one before. His game is like Deebo Samuel. Isn't it? Every year there's someone that they're like, oh, he's the Deebo of this draft. Do you think Kyle can hold himself back?
Because Kyle's probably like, well, fine.
I got to fill this Deebo role. I got to get this Deebo role back in.
You're not going to let me have Deebo, then I'm just going to, draft another.
I'm just going to get another Deebo. Yeah, I'm just going to get. It's like he's a run after the catch guy. Look, I think he's a good player. And in the mock that I'm looking at, he goes 13 to Miami. And obviously 12 would be the Dallas Cowboys, and they would take Ashton Dianci, which is like, come on, that's got to be a lock. Like, if there's a bet out there for who the Dallas Cowboys are going to take, for a fact they're taking Gianci. But for the 49ers at pick 11, Mykel Williams from Georgia, 6'5", 265, the third ranked edge, the 13th ranked prospect. And here's what Mike Renner, formerly of PFF, now of CBS Sports, said. John Lynch's first four first-round picks as GM all came in the trenches. While he's taken only Trey Lance, number 3 overall in 2021, and Ricky Pearsall, number 31 in 2024 in the first round since, Lynch looks poised to return to the defensive line of scrimmage that saw a downturn last fall. Mykel Williams is the kind of athletic marvel who defensive line coach Chris Kasurik could work magic with. What's my question about this? I think the Chris Kasurik reputation thing is still like a little bit, now it's gone too far, because
it's like superseded him.
Yeah, like now, like, it doesn't matter if the defensive line completely underperforms. It's not Chris Kasurik's fault. But if you bring in a player, wait till Chris Kasurik gets his hands on him. I think Chris Kasurik and Deebo Samuel are kind of living on their 2021 reputation, right? Like, what do you think?
Yes, because not every defensive line pick, as we know, has worked out for the 49ers. When they have worked out, it's been like 3 years after the fact, like contract year,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been kind of tough sledding with some of the defensive line picks. And I don't really know why. I think in the past, I wasn't really keen on, the defensive line and doing my draft homework. Now I am. So, like, I think I would know why it went wrong a little bit more if it happened again. But I really hope it does not happen again. Like, we just can't afford that. Like, you have to have a can't miss prospect. And at pick 11, like, there's no excuse. Like, you have, and I know they've had high draft picks around this range before that haven't really worked out, at least not immediately. And I think part of us, we're afraid that might happen again. But I think there are some good prospects here for the 49ers to, shore up their defensive line. Personally, like, I want them to go defensive tackle, but defensive tackle at the same time is super deep in this draft.
It is
super deep.
It is.
So they can actually wait to get one. But, I like Walter Nolan as an option for the 49ers as well. You can maybe even trade back a couple spots and still get them. Let me ask you about Jalen Walker, because, like, so I just started catching wind of him a little bit more within the last day, because Jalen Walker is ranked number 3 in Dane Brugler's top 100, which is, surprising to some people. And he's a hybrid, right? Like, so he's played inside linebacker and then also edge. He's projected at more as an edge, but having that, he's like a two-way player. Not two-way player, but like two-position player, I think makes him a hard eval for some teams and even, some content creators. So what do you think of Jalen Walker? Because I started watching him yesterday and I was like, well, that could be intriguing. I do like his game. He's a great run defender. The ability to be able to play, 2 different spots. And he also is a good pass rusher too. I think it would be intriguing to the 49ers. Again, I don't know where he's going to go. I think that's going to be tough to predict right now, but I am seeing people, high on him as an option, right? So that can be an option as well for them.
He's a trade back candidate for me. I think you stockpile picks and then you find a way to get him back later, like at the end. Like, I don't know if I love him at 11. But to Dazzle's point, if we don't draft O-line, when are we going to get a better chance to draft O-line? How are we going to replace Trent? What scares me is just taking Kelvin Banks because he's an offensive lineman. And then
you can't reach for need.
Well, less than that. I don't even know if it's a reach. I think there's a consensus that he's going to be there. But do we just draft any offensive lineman, or do we have to draft the right one? And I don't know. Again, I'm not in on the process. Again, all we have is the film. We don't have the interviews. We don't have the makeup of the guy. So when we look around and we're like, Why are you not taking this guy? We have to be in those rooms and those interviews to understand what they're saying and how they're answering these questions. Are you going to come in here, or are you going to be, are you going to be a guy that we can rely on? So here's the problem. If you draft an offensive lineman, everyone's going to say, yay. But if that offensive lineman isn't good and you let one of these edge guys go, see, this is the part. It can't just be
double-edged sword.
Right. It can't just be, hey, we need offensive linemen. Just draft offensive linemen. Because when you draft an offensive lineman and he's not good, you're not going to like that. So it's hard. Like, we still have to go through the process, and we're not in those rooms for those interviews, talking to those guys and figuring out their makeup. And that's the thing. Banks did very well in pass protection in Texas, but some people are saying he could be a guard. I know he played tackle, but it doesn't mean that he's a 1-for-1 fit right in for Trent Williams. It's complicated. In my opinion, offensive line is probably one of the hardest things to see translate, right? Somebody could literally go crazy in college and be a can't miss. And, and then you got teams like Cincinnati who take Amarius Mims, and they're like, oh, the skills are there, but he has like no pass blocking snaps. And it's tough. It's really hard. So the idea of drafting an offensive lineman for the sake of drafting an offensive lineman to say you need an offensive lineman is where you're going to find yourself in a problem, because it has to always be based on your board. Best player available. If there's someone there that can help you, as opposed to a glaring need and drafting someone who plays that position, that's what bad organizations do. So I'm a little skeptical about that.
Yeah, and I think fans often don't think about the fit, right? Not just any tackle is going to work. And yeah, you allude to like the personality and the character aspect, the interview aspect of it all, that as well. But like measurables, they're very specific things I think the 49ers look for in tackles, and they got to check all those boxes, especially if you're going to take one, that high in the draft, right? And I really do think that the 49ers just don't value tackle as a big need as much as fans do. Like, we know that. I think I can see a repeat of last year where we're like, come on, tackle, and they end up getting the guard again, which, I could listen to the argument that guard is a bigger need than tackle right now, right? I do still think you need to get a tackle at some point because Trent's not going to, be playing forever. And we know we got to have an answer for, the right side as well at some point. But I just don't think they see that as big a need as everyone else does. I continue to think that first pick is going to go defensive line. What's crazy though? Like you mentioned the Luther Burden thing. And yes, I've started to see, like offensive picks, tackle, sure, but like Tyler Warren is still being floated as an option from like Matt Mayoko. And even with Debo, this trade is now even more amplified, because it's like, hey, like you need another wide receiver. Well, someone like Tyler Warren is a pass catching option for you. And he can also alleviate, the physical aspect of what George Kittle does, the blocking, all that. Have a rookie, a younger player, take care of all the dirty work. You let, George Kittle run free and do what he does best, while also having a good tight end that could also block and receive well too. So I don't know. It's just funny. That would be a shocker to me though, if the 49ers went that route. Even with the Luther Burden thing, I think that would be really surprising. I don't know if I would love the 49ers going wide receiver in the first round 2 drafts in a row, especially again when they have the top 11 pick.
We got a few more minutes here. The unfaithful perspective at this point, do what the Eagles do. They draft good players. They draft really good players. Remember when Cooper DeJean was a 49er?
But that's what the 49ers need to do, right? They just need to draft good players. Like, don't overthink it.
If I was a general manager, I would simply just draft good players. If I was a head coach and play caller, every play would be for a touchdown. Like, you're overcomplicating this, man. Simply draft good players. Dazzler0187, thank you again for the donation. Can always trade up to go O-line or guard. Look how much the Eagles have invested in O-line. D-line can be later round picks and free agency. Again, different ways to do it. Again, if you find yourself a stud edge who can run with Nick Bosa, BJ Hill, DJ Jones can be added in as defensive tackles. If you draft a defensive tackle, Azeez Ojulari could be an edge that you pick up, in free agency. Different ways to go about this. It's not a 1-for-1 thing. Like, there's different ways. Offensive line, again, Dahlman is the one that we're looking for at center. Tevin Jenkins, again, from Chicago at left guard, could be there. Like, there's different ways. There's different ways to do all of these things. And there's no, if you want to do it in the draft, fine, again, but it sounds like this team really needs right away, like, impact guys, not guys that you can wait for a year. Like, if you run back out there and you run back out there with Brendel because the center you took is not ready, like, that's the part. Oh, damn, these super chats are coming in. Justin says, I love Luther Burden. I've been watching him for years. He's a much more complete wide receiver than Debo, in my opinion. I would love him at 11. We're going to find out. Steph, thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for tapping in and everything as well, too. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. Make sure you subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcast. Make sure you follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Follow me on Twitter at JasonAponte2103. Make sure you guys are tapped in on Steph's draft sheet tracker. It's a great tool to find out who the 49ers have met with, who they haven't. And Combine's coming up in 2 weeks, so we're going to get a lot more information and pieces to the puzzle. So for Steph, for Jay, we're out here.
Peace.